Hello there. We are continuing with our session on sales and scaling up. Again, recapping, we are looking at, uh, we've covered minimum value offering, and I call it minimum value offering because we are dealing with services as well as products. Often enough, colloquially, people talk about MVP, minimum value product, but in India, we have very strong and a vibrant service sector, and all service companies also have specialty, and their offerings are also very focused and specialized, and therefore have converted into an offering which could be a product or a service as a combination. We've talked about that. So we've talked about that. We have talked about sales, and we've also talked about go to market. So I'll recap some of those, and then we want to get into the heart of sales and talk about a few concepts here, and also some scaling methods. And we will end there. We will pick up some of the examples that we have had in the previous sessions. Just recap, all of you know that we said that sales is a process that converts a defined opportunity into purchase order and a signed contract, and it's kind of contract to contract. I just want to leave one thought with all of you here that contract to contract. So if you're selling it to, let us say, government of India or group of Tata Group or something like that, obviously they will give you a purchase order and they will sign a contract with you. What happens if you go to the neighborhood store and buy a toothpaste or a pack of chips? Is there a contract? There's no contract, but there is still a sale. So we will come to some of these things that we are talking about here. We covered go to market, and we talked about very important: what do we sell, to whom do we sell, and where do we sell, what is the nature of our offering, is it a product or a service, and do we sell it to an enterprise, do we sell it to consumers, or do we sell it to an enterprise, through an enterprise to a consumer. We talked about that. We talked about iterative process with go to market, minimum value product, and what founders should look for. And we also touched upon founders value proposition and how what founders need to do. uh, Now, if you recall, in our ideation we talked about a couple of ideas that all of you must work on. Now, here is an exercise we would like you to do. Describe your business or your idea that translates into business in less than 30 words. Less than 30 words. And if you want to write it down in a language other than English, for example, Hindi, Marathi, Gujarati, Oriya, Tamil, whatever you are comfortable with, please do not hesitate to do that. The idea is to write it crisply and concisely. Also, classify your business that your idea will propagate into a B2B, that is business to business. That means you will be selling to another organization, you will be selling to consumers, or you will be selling to an organization that will in turn put it on, send it to consumers like Amazon or Flipkart. Or it may be a combination, or you're not sure. Describe it clearly what your thoughts are, and also product, platform, service, or you're selling a combination combo. And what is your market as you are thinking right now? If you say my brother or my father or my father-in-law or my grandfather or my classmate's father, or whosoever, a good friend of mine, someone who lives in the neighborhood that I know from somewhere, or a professor of mine who knows someone who is in a position to buy what you're offering, describe that as your market very concisely. Describe that as your market, because we're going to build from very, very simple foundation. This is a question many people find it very hard to describe. I always ask two questions: what's your market on the day one? That's one thing. And how did you get your first customer? Except for one class where somebody did a lead generation. And in our company, Mojo Network, where I was founder, through a lead generation, we chanced upon a large Fortune company, and they were our first major customer. Most of the time, when you talk to founders, they will tell you that the sale was done to to someone that knew very well. Defining the baseline of your business basically means The 30 words: what do you sell, to whom do you sell, and where do you sell, and where do you want to be, and in what time frame you want to get there. Think hard. Sometimes you may get confused, sometimes you may not be able to decide, but just do this exercise, because this exercise helps you to understand how the process is going to unfold. Okay. And how much do you see your business scaling up, say from one customer or a small set of customers or a small consumer set to uh, an expanded one in 18 or 36 months, whatever you choose. You can say, I have visibility only for a year or next 6 months, or I'm looking at 5 years. Pick your time frame. What I'm asking you to do is to take your own decisions. Founders have to take their own decisions. There is no book that will give you exact answers. There is no law of thermodynamics or law of physics or Bohr's model or economics law of diminishing with that you can read a book and answer. This is now real life where you will have to sit down and make these calls as entrepreneurs. Now let's get to, we talked about defined opportunity, and you will be surprised to know that very, very mature, experienced professionals also sometimes do not differentiate between what is a lead to what is an opportunity to when the sale actually happens. So we'll talk about that. We'll do it in two stages. When you sell B2B and when you sell B2C. And these slides are kind of product centric, but you can understand them from a service context also. The lead generation process is not very different. So we talked about your idea. We talked about your minimum value offering. We talked about your go-to-market strategy, and now we are there to look at the basket of customers with similar requirement. That's our market. That's we defined, and that's what we decided. You reach out to that target basket of customers. You reach out to them. And if you're able to establish a contact point, and trust me, this is very difficult. When you get past your known people, who is the right person to contact, what is her or his phone number, email, physical address, LinkedIn, profile, whatever that you talked about. Sometimes you might be able to get social media profile, but they don't entertain your inbound messages, stuff like that. So can you establish the contact? And very many times people imagine that I'm going to sell it to, Facebook or, Persistent Systems or Bombay Shaving or Indigo Paints or Tata Group, but they have no idea how they're going to reach there. An important point is to get there. And you will see I'm using minus numbers. So -3 is my market. That's my customer. I want to sell to this basket of customers. I don't know. I may know some. I may not know some. You will quickly get to a point where you will not know an individual inside an organization. When that situation comes, either you are too early and it can be risk, or you have reached a point of volume in your scale up that you don't know everyone that you're going to sell to, and that's a good news. Do not feel bad about it. Okay. Now you are able to reach out to that customer set. Some of them you're able to reach out to them, but they have not responded. So you somewhere made a call, sent a mail, sent a message, you did whatever you were necessary, but they have not responded back. What do you call it? I call them suspects. And this is a very common term in the sales, lingua. I call them suspect. The reason I call them suspect is not that they are bad. It's just that I don't know whether that organization or that individual in that organization will actually create a opportunity for me. Okay. When you hear a response, suppose say you have defined this thing and you have sent a WhatsApp message, a post you've sent on a Facebook, you've reached out on LinkedIn or whatever your platform, or sent a simple mail, or even a letter by post. or you announced it on your social media, this is what I have, and someone responds. Now it becomes a lead. It becomes a lead means there is a chance that that organization and that individual may be interested in your MVO, your minimum value offering, that whatever you have right now. And it doesn't only remain minimum value offering. When you grow your organization, the same model applies. Somebody responds to your marketing campaign. That means there is a potential that you might have a lead. And lead means that organization or that individual may have need to buy your product or service, and that is very important. So that we call as a lead. So we got to the ground zero now, -3 to ground zero. Okay, and this is easily classified as lead generation. You will hear this term very often, lead generation. Lead means someone that you can reach out to, or you have reached, who may be interested in what you're offering. May be interested in what you're offering. It's not is interested, may be interested. Okay. Now from here onward, what happens? You'll notice that the blue has become deeper now. From light blue, it was amber, to light blue to deeper blue. And why reason for deep blue? It's cool to know that someone is interested in what you're offering. There can be nothing more jubilant or illuminating or happiness when a founder finds out that her or his offering is finding resonance from someone. And that's very important. It could even be your brother, but you'll feel very, very happy that something that you have is useful to somebody else. So it's getting cool now. How do you translate a lead to an opportunity? If they have a initiative, I call it project defined, and there is a requirement that has been identified, and your minimum value offering meets some or all of that requirement, and there is a budget assigned to it. That means if they find you the most suitable provider of the goods or services, then they will buy from you. And when they say they will buy from you, means they are ready to spend the money. Big difference between lead and opportunity. You can have thousands of leads, but if they don't have the budget, it's not turning into sales. And salespeople, professional salespeople, want defined or qualified leads. That means there is a clear need. There may not be a budget, but they want clear lead that what they are offering is required. And an opportunity is something, some of them even ask for it. Give me an opportunity, I'll convert it into business. Don't give me frivolous contacts. I'm not interested in spending my time. Very senior professionals often say that, don't waste my time and your time to give me something that you met someone at a coffee shop and that person is your biggest customer. Hell no. This is what you have to go through. Okay. So let us say they reach out to you, as we have said in -1 and 0. They reach out to you and you put a proposal of what you're offering. Now you are shortlisted as one of the potential suppliers. You may think you're the only one. It's not necessary. There may be others who are giving the same thing. Do not forget, in B2B, for very large corporations, they always have two more choices. One is we don't do it, which is rather unfortunate. Second thing is, can we do it internally? Especially for software, there is a question always in many corporations, they come up, can we build it ourselves? Do we need to buy it from outside, or can we build it ourselves? If you're working with some organizations, is important. So that can also be a competition. Potential suppliers for the same opportunity are your competition. Not buying, that means they do not decide to buy, is also a competitor, because a competitor is someone that takes the business away from you. So that if that business doesn't exist, that is an important. I'll come back to it when we talk about the government. So you are shortlisted. So there are 3 companies shortlisted. Yours is one of them is shortlisted. Okay. Now from +2 to +3, you have been selected as the vendor of choice for the product or service that you're offering. So that goes from +1 to +2 to +3. So we have come from -3 to +3. -3 was basket of customers. We had no idea how we're going to get there. We somehow found a way to get the contacts. We reached out to them. Some of them responded. A few of them actually converted into lead because they wanted exactly what you're asking for. And they also had a budget and a project to do that. And that became an opportunity. You put your best foot forward. You did whatever was necessary and you have been selected. Good news. All of this is wonderful. Okay. Now it goes for large corporation, it goes into a typically an organization called procurement or contract. And now they are the ones in more than one cases will issue the purchase order or the negotiate the contract with you. Many times you come up to 3 and 3 to 4 can be a hillary step. Many times you fall apart here for different reasons. We don't have time to go through all that, but it's very important to understand. You have been selected does not mean the sale is done. The sale will be done only when you get a purchase order. Below that, the sale is not done. So now you have to negotiate with them. Sometimes it can be easy because the purchase order or the procurement groups knows that the people who want this product or service have gone through from -3 or -2 to +3. So some amount of diligence has happened and you're the selected vendor. They will negotiate the price with you and then bingo, you get a purchase order. Sometimes it can be restarting again, though you have the advantage of having been selected, but sometimes it can be restart. So do not lose patience, do not lose these things. This happens to every vendor and you have the disadvantage of being a startup. You may also have the advantage of being a startup and a founder. It can happen both ways. People are sympathetic to new company, to a founder. They give you more elbow room. They want to listen to you. They feel good about it. And all things equal, they might even give you an order because you're a startup. On the other hand, there are others who will say, why should I take a risk? All of this happens. So now you get to the +4, which is purchase order. Trust me, from +3 to +4, to getting a purchase order can be 3 months, 4 months, 6 months. It can be 2 days. So you'll have to again figure out what is important. And the reason I'm saying when you scale up, so business is going from 30 lakhs to 3 crore to 10 crore to 100 crore, and you have a board and you have market and you have investors to respond to. How much business will you do in a defined time, like next quarter, next year? It all depends on +2 to +4. How many places you have been shortlisted, how many you're going to close, and when you're going to close. Further down, how many leads are you generating? How many of them can you convert into an opportunity, and how can you take it through the deep blue process is very, very important. In the early stage, and this is called sales. So the top line arrows, light blue arrows are lead generation, which is often part of marketing. Marketing is not just lead generation, but lead generation is typically handled by marketing group in B2B organizations. And sales is actually creating a customer. To me, as simple as that if anyone who creates a customer is sales. So therefore, senior executives, be it CEO, CTO, everybody must be involved in customer creation. It's a misnomer. Sometimes I find founders who say, I'm technical. No, if you're a founder, you are involved in everything. If you're not involved, you don't deserve the title of a founder. Very, very important. You may later hire the vice president of sales whose job will be there, but as founders, you're always involved in lead generation and customer creation. Okay. In the beginning, when you're selling to someone that you know, you're not going to go through all of them. I mean, these -2 to +4 will happen to you, but they will be more internal, intuitive. It will not happen like you have only 3 people to reach out to, and 2 of them are going to give you order because they're all known to you, and that's your basket of customer. All of this happens naturally. But when you have 1,000 leads, or even say 50 leads, now this process becomes important because different people may be involved. Lead generation may be done by different people. Sales may be different. So lead generation may be common, but there are different salespeople depending upon where the leads come from and stuff like that. So it is important to understand the formalism of this process as it scales up. Very often, founders want this multicolored arrow, which I talked about in my previous session or early time in this session. Founders want to slap this arrow on the top two, and then a mess happens. And it's important to understand that scale up happens in this manner. Getting to the organized way is very, very important. Uh, Indigo founder Hemant Jalan in a class said something very important. They sell paints, and so you can do all the strategy. He has Mahendra Singh Dhoni as his brand ambassador, but he said, finally, when a house is getting painted and the house owners want to find out, and they will ask the painter, whoso is painting their house, go get the paint. And they will think about Nerolac, Asian Paints. But if the painter says, Sarji, there is a new paint, Indigo paints aaya bazaar mein, acha hai, it's good paint in the market. And the house owner says, okay, go get Indigo paint, let's try it out. Now, that kind of an influencer is very important in sales. Who are influencing within the customer organization to take a decision or stop a decision? You have to sense it. Very often I have defined a very linear sounding process. It's not as linear. You can iterate among these. It can go from a lead to a suspect to a lead to a shortlisted opportunity to you getting selected to somebody messing around with the whole process to back to +1. So it's not as clean a process as it is, and people who influence to take it forward or stop it are there, and we have to spot those influencers and make sure that they work for you rather than work against you. For example, you're selling a technology product and the CIO depends on a technical person to make a decision. Now, the perception of that technical person is very important. Is that person convinced about your value offering? Is that person having any doubts? And how much influence that person exerts on the decision making is very, very important. Okay, that was B2B. That means you're selling it to a business. Now let's see B2C. Little different, but there are some commonalities. Again, the strategy is there. Now here we have a consumer set. So sometimes in B2C we do not know who's buying. Or we don't want to know actually. If you do not know who your buyer is and you have hundreds and thousands of buyers, it's a good news. That means your business is scaled up. In the beginning, it won't happen, but that's what you want to do. Okay. How do you reach a consumer? Consumer is a family, an individual. Now you can't, if you're going to create 1 million customers like that, you're not going to go and talk to each one of them individually. That's the way you would do to 100 large companies. You may want to talk to their individual executives, but doing it for 1 million people cannot happen like that. And therefore, it is important to understand that. So you will reach out in a manner like, over the top, television, radio, social media, all of these things will happen. And you will actually create a demand. And this demand happens in all organizations. For example, IPL does a massive campaign and then they create a demand for you to go and watch a match. Or a consumer products does a blitz on the media, and then you know that a new toothpaste has arrived, or a new shaving cream has arrived, a new soap has arrived, or a new shirts have been or new saris have arrived, or there is a Diwali sale or Christmas sale or whatever, Durga Puja sale, all that is happening. So you create a demand. And once you create a demand, that is demand generation under marketing. What happens now? We are back to our blue cool logos. Where are you going to sell? Let's say you're launching a apparel. Now you want to say, okay, I'll do it from Bangalore, I'll do it from Mumbai, or here is the product, and I will not go to big metros. I'm going to tier 2, tier 3 towns. So you will select locations, and you will find people who will actually take your product to that location. So these are the partners, and then you will create channel so that these product and services or these products are available where you have identified your basket of customers. So if it is going to be only in coastal town, if it is only in Asia Pacific, if it is only in part of Mumbai, all of this is part of your strategy as we talked about. Okay, that's your customer creation. And final pickup sales again. So you've created the demand. You also identified place where the product is available. It could be online, it could be on Amazon, it could be on Flipkart, it could be in a neighborhood shop, or it could be a digital native brand where you go to the website and place an order. All of this is there. So that is the customer creation. But the final push marketing has to do, for example, getting it on the shelf where somebody will go and sees it and picks it up is the again responsibility of marketing. So unlike in a B2B where you have clear marketing and then sales and sales gets you the purchase order, here marketing and sales work closer and in tandem. Okay? There is an influence here. Again, exactly the same thing. In the beginning, maybe you have 500, or you maybe all your batch. Suppose you build something. Let's say you have resume writing service. You write the best resumes and stuff. You're creating a business around resume writing. And where will you go? You'll talk to 20, 30, 40 friends whose resumes you will write. But when the business scales up, that may not be the only way it works. Now there you are actually you are the influencer, but when it scales up, you are not the influencer. You may be the influencer, but in a different way. And therefore, again, the multicolored arrow where founders do everything now need to be formally organized in a structured process like this. I also want to emphasize that structured process does not mean we are going to bring in bureaucracy. All of this is the challenge of the senior executives to make sure that this process exists. At the same time, it is innovative and flexible so that people can leverage all the inputs that they come to you. Because as I've said before, one of two or three things that startups differentiate themselves is the speed, focus, and differentiator. So you don't want to lose these three fundamentals as you try to scale up. And that is the challenge for all the founders. Now, putting all of this together, I want to give you a couple of examples. And I want you to figure out the go-to-market. Atreya is an IIT Bombay company, and they have built a Nadi Pariksha. All of you probably are familiar that an Ayurvedic doctor does Nadi Pariksha. They'll hold their hand on your pulse, fingers, and they will go quiet for a minute or so. That seems like a lifetime. And then they will do some diagnostics. All the input they get by listening to the pulse or measuring even the physical side of the pulse, they try and diagnose what's wrong with you, what are the diseases you have, what are the conditions you have, and try and give you a medication, Ayurvedic medication. What these guys have done is they've replaced that with a electronics. So it picks up all of that information that a human finger of a professional Ayurvedic doctor picks up. They've taken that and put it into computer and created phenomenal analytics and graphs and a whole lot of input, which then can be used for the same thing. So instead of using our own fingers as a doctor, now technology has come into the picture. Okay, all of us know doctors use stethoscope. You have cough and cold, you can have any diseases, they will definitely want to put stethoscope and do that. Sports and health has become very critical. Now people are wearing all kinds of gadgets and trying to see their vitals like heartbeat and pulse rate and indexes and all that. So they also exist, and there are many more things exist. So there are wellness products, there are wellness gear, there is medical gear, and now you're trying to introduce this one. Okay, give you another example. My company Mojo Networks, secure Wi-Fi. That's what they did. We built these devices which provided Wi-Fi, enterprise grade to massively scalable. When I say massively scalable means if there's a large company, it can deploy hundreds of thousands of these devices managed from a single console. And one good example I can give it to you is Reliance Jio. They deployed over 250, 300,000 devices like that across the country. in India, and that is what does. So that's the scalability that you have. A Fortune company may deploy 5,000, 8,000, or even 15, 20,000, stuff like that. That's what they do. Okay? Now, look at the competition here. You have a set of consumer-oriented devices like, you know, some of you, if you have at home, you will see a Netgear or a, Linksys or any of these, small devices that you can buy online. They'll cost you, a few thousand rupees, nothing very expensive. Versus you have Cisco and HP, very large enterprise global corporations who also sell Wi-Fi gear. Now, the question is, you've built the minimum value Nadi Pariksha, you build the first version of your device. Should Atreus sell to Ayurvedic doctors, to doctors who are individuals, or should it sell it to a hospital? So should its strategy be B2C or B2B? Similarly, for Mojo Networks, should they take their first version of their Wi-Fi device, and should they send it to home users, or should they sell it to or enterprise, means organization? Go to the website, understand it, think through it. I want you to solve this puzzle. What should be the go-to-market strategy? Describe it, and we would like you to solve it and come back to us with your answer. There are no yes or no that A is right and B is wrong. No. The strategy is as good as the people who implement the strategy. And Apple would not be Apple if Steve Jobs was not behind the strategy. Take Steve Jobs out of the equation, the strategy may not work. So it is important to understand that something